Hey guys, hoping all is well with everyone, and I do want to start by apologizing for my large gap of time between my video posts, but I hope everyone is doing well, and in this video we're going to be continuing our read-along of The Secret Zoo, Riddles in Danger. Last time we did leave off, we completed with chapter 17, so we're going to be starting with chapter 18 today. And as always, I will be showing you guys any pictures if we do come across them, but typically in the Secret Zoo series we don't see too many pictures, but please feel free to follow along. Chapter 18, Catching Snowflakes. Ella and Richie hunkered down and headed across the Miller's backyard. The property backed against a wooded area between two sides of the neighborhood. In the thick of trees, the scouts dodged trunks and fallen branches. They stopped in a clearing and stared out in different directions. A few houses were barely visible, their lights off. Confident they couldn't be seen, the scouts moved their attention to the treetops. "I don't see any," Ella said. "Me either," Richie said. He adjusted his glasses, which Ella had given back to him on their walk over. Around them, a few snowflakes fell. "Are they even out here?" Richie shrugged. "Tamarin said 10 o'clock, right?" She nodded. Hearing Tamarin's name made her think of the descenders. She wondered if they could see them from the zoo posts and decided there was no way. They strolled around a bit, their gazes held toward the heights. The web of branches was perfectly still. Richie crouched beside a hollow of a trunk and shined his penlight in. He straightened up and shrugged his shoulders. Nothing. "We need to go up," said Ella. "Up where?" Ella pointed into the heights. "There." "I don't think..." "Come on! It'll just take a second. I want to see these little furbies." "You know how I climb?" Ella grabbed his wrist and pulled him over to a tree. She knelt and cupped her hands out in front of her, a step for Richie's foot. "Here, the first limb's always the toughest. And the second, and the third, and Richie!" He mumbled something under his breath and then planted his foot in her hands. He pushed up and landed his other foot in the crook of a limb, as he tried to lift to show her discovery. "Oh my gosh!" His eyes had swelled to twice their normal size. "You found them? Are they friendly?" "Seem to be. You haven't seen any?" "Nope. I think my tree's empty. I'm going back down." As Richie started to descend, Ella saw that his back had 3 very peculiar bumps along it. "Richie, you're covered in tarsiers." "Huh? What are you talking about?" "Your back. You got 3 on it." He became deathly still and seemed to consider this. What should I do?" "Not what you'd normally do, which is scream and fall from the tree. I don't care so much about you, but the tarsiers, they're kind of cute." Richie glanced over his shoulders and tried to see down his back. "What are they doing?" "It looks like they're getting ready to chew off your cheeks." Richie's expression opened with fear. Ella shook her head. "You dork. Meet me on the ground." She climbed down and waited beneath Richie's tree. On her shoulders, the tarsiers craned their necks to watch the action. Richie successfully navigated to a new branch, then another. When he tried to go to a third, he slipped, almost fell, then released a mild profanity into the night. The tarsiers turned to Ella, their bulbous eyes seeming ripe with concern. "Don't worry," Ella advised. "He's actually doing pretty good. I thought he'd be dead by now." Richie touched down to the ground and swung his back toward Ella. "What are they doing now?" he asked, concern blending his syllables. "Sitting there, looking cute." She reached out her arm, and a tarsier jumped to it like a parrot. She shoved the animal toward Richie. "Check him out." "Last time I did that, I almost had my head swallowed." "Well, this one doesn't look hungry. Now hold out your arm." When Richie did, Ella shook her arm a bit. "Go get him, Gizmo." The Tarsier kicked out his hind legs and hopped through the air like a frog. It touched down on Richie's forearm, and it shot its wild eyes gaze up at him. It eeped once. As Richie nervously looked it over, Ella reached behind him for another Tarsier. "It is sort of cute," Richie said, "if you can see beyond the terror of the experience, I mean." Ella pitched her arm in front of Richie again. "Here," she said, "have another." The Tarsier lunged onto the front of Richie's jacket, climbed into one of his pockets, and poked its head out. The two scouts started laughing, Richie a bit tensely. "How funny," Ella said. "He looks like—" She stopped short as a Tarsier on her left shoulder sprang several feet into the air. It chomped down on a fat snowflake, then landed on her shoulder again, its eyes wider than ever from the shock of the cold. As the scouts broke out laughing again, the Tarsier on Richie's back leaped off, snagged a snowflake out of the air, and landed on Ella's arm. "Too cool," Ella said. She stepped into the clearing for a place where the snowflakes could have an unobstructed fall. She looked up and saw them streaming down from the night's nothingness. They were bigger than quarters. "Richie, over here!" In the clearing, Richie faced Ella, about 10 steps dividing them. A Tarsier kicked off Ella's arm and shot forward. It gulped a snowflake in mid-flight, then grabbed onto Richie's leg. The Tarsier on Richie's shoulder went next. It soared through the air, its long legs dangling behind it, and caught a snowflake before landing on Ella, where another pushed off and flew across the distance back to Richie. Ella said, "They're so strong." The strange little animals continued like that, one after another streaking through the open area between Ella and Richie. They pulled snowflakes out of the air and gobbled them down. Ella didn't know if they thought the icy crystals were bugs, or if they were just having fun. Maybe both. Or maybe they were just happy to be playing with the scouts. A Tarsier landed on Richie's head, plowed over his pom-pom, then fell down to his back. Ella went into a fit of laughter. Seconds later, another Tarsier missed Ella and passed over her head. It grabbed onto a nearby branch and quickly sprang back, striking down on one side of Ella's fluffy earmuffs, knocking them askew. A cloud emptied a fresh load of snowflakes. Big and white and patient, they floated down into the clearing, dotting out the scenery. To Ella, parts of Richie kept disappearing. Sounds softened. The crunch of leaves beneath Ella's feet, the eeps of the animals, Richie's laughter, the noises dulled as they passed through the filter of the falling snow. Excited by all of this, the Tarsiers jumped back and forth with new energy. They ping-ponged off Ella and Richie, speeding past one another in the air. Each time one landed on Ella, she watched its big eyes blink away the snow. Snowflakes melted on their bodies and matted their fur. Within minutes, the storm slowed down, and with it, so did the Tarsiers. They settled on the scouts, 3 on Ella and 2 on Richie. Ella felt their slight shudders as their tiny chests heaved. "We better go," Ella said. "We should have been home a long time ago." Richie nodded, and the two of them hurried over to a tree. The Tarsiers climbed onto the branches and stayed perched in low spots. They suddenly seemed exhausted. "Later, dudes," Ella said. She turned and led Richie out of the woods. By the time they reached the street, the snow had already died down. Most of what was on the ground probably wouldn't survive the night. As they walked, Ella turned again to the treetops. Somewhere in them, hundreds of Tarsiers were perched on branches, perfectly still and hidden. She imagined their bulging eyes staring down. Right now, they could see her and Richie. They even knew what the two of them had just done. "We've been watched," Ella said, "our whole lives. Every night." "Yeah," Richie said, "and maybe not just by the Tarsiers." She turned to him. "What are you talking about?" Richie lifted his eyebrows. "De Graaf." With all of their concerns on the Sasquatches lately, Ella had almost forgot about the Shadowist. She kept her stare across the nearby yards. bushes, sheds, corners. Was he somewhere out there? Was he watching them right now? Ella shuddered. Come on, Richie. Let's get the heck out of here. The two of them bolted up the street, away from the hiding spots in the yards, and beneath the watchful stares of the Tarsiers. Chapter 19. Roger, Roger. When the final school bell rang on Monday, the scouts snatched their backpacks from their lockers and ran to the bathrooms, where they used the stalls to change into their zoo uniforms. Ugly button-up shirts with vertical stripes and long, flat collars that disguised them as zoo volunteers. Back at their lockers, they threw on their jackets and winter gear, then squirmed down the crowded halls and pushed through the exit, the cold air rushing into their lungs. They bolted across the playground, across the street, then through the west entrance of the zoo, which was adjacent to Clarksville Elementary. At the entrance to Butterfly Nets, a familiar sign read, "Closed for construction." Noah plucked the magic key from his pocket, checked over his shoulders, then cracked open the door, saying, "Voila!" The scouts turned their shoulders to slip inside. They headed around a turn and were met by a sight that caused them to stop in their tracks. Just off the path, Tank was standing among the trees. He was surrounded by a group of animals, a polar bear, an emperor penguin, and no fewer than 50 prairie dogs, which were running around the feet of other animals in a frenzy, stirring the fallen leaves. The scouts recognized the animals immediately as Blizzard, Podgy, and P-Dog and his pals. Also with Tank were the Descenders, Sam, Hannah, Tamarin, and Solana. Solana wore her soft blue leather jacket and fingerless gloves, clothes that 12-inch quills could spring from. Her long, smooth hair looped around her ears and drooped down her back. She was beautiful. "Oh my gosh," Megan said as she glanced over her shoulders in a nervous way. "What's everyone doing here?" Ella was more direct in sharing her surprise. "Are you guys out of your minds?" Tank reached out one of his meaty arms and scratched Blizzard behind the ear. "Don't sweat it. We aren't staying." Ella said, "But what are..." "After what happened last week, Mr. D and the Secret Council have made a change of plans." "How so?" Noah asked. Marlowe suddenly shot out of the treetops and took a spot on his shoulder, landing with a chirp. Tank rubbed his jawline, saying, "We're going to beef up patrol in the grottos. The Gifteds. We're sending in some of them." The scouts knew that the Gifteds were animals that had adapted in the secret zoo. They had greater awareness and communication skills, and some secret citizens believed the magic of the secret zoo had changed them. The animals in front of them, Blizzard, Podgy, and P-Dog, all were Gifteds. Blizzard rolled his snout and growled, and Podgy raised his flippers a bit. "Where's Little Big?" Richie asked. "He's waiting for us just inside the grottos. We tried to squeeze him up the staircase, but it didn't happen." Blizzard growled, as if to acknowledge the struggle. Noah turned to the Descenders and said, "What are you guys doing here?" "Yeah," Ella said. "Don't you guys ever sleep?" "Now and then," Solana replied. Tamarin said, "Lately a lot less now, and a lot more then." Sam took a step toward the scouts. "We're going to show the Gifteds around the grottos today, and show you guys how to use these." Sam nodded to Tank, who reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out a fistful of stuff, and one by one tossed something to each of the scouts. After Noah snatched his out of the air, he took a look at it. Noah could tell that a small plastic piece full of electronics was supposed to fit in his ear. "A radio," Tank said. "The same kind me and the Descenders wear. You turn it on, plug it into your head, and let the technology of your world do its thing." The mention of technology excited Richie, and immediately set his in. "Sweet! How does it work?" When Tank touched his ear, Noah realized the big man could now hear Richie's voice through the speaker. "Bone mics to talk. A switcher controls voice activation, if that's your game. The signal's scrambled, so no one but us can hear." Tank removed his stare off the scouts and said, "Red, you there?" Richie pulled his head to one side, as if surprised by what was surely Charlie Red's voice in his ear. "I hear him," Richie said. Tank nodded. "And he hears you." As the scouts plugged their headsets into their ears, Noah heard their voices. Ella said, "But how can we hear one another when we don't have microphones?" "We do," Richie said. "Bone mics work from bone conduction. When you talk, vibrations carry through the skull. Bone mics pick up those vibrations and translate them to your voice." "Way cool," Ella said. "Meg, can you hear me?" "Roger," said Megan with a turn of her head. "How about me?" "Roger, Roger," Ella spoke in her best battle droid voice. She turned to Tank. "Can other people in the secret zoo hear us now?" "Not a bit," Tank said. "The radio signals can't pass through those portals between the two worlds." "So they only work in one world or the other?" Tank nodded. "Roger, Roger," Ella joked again. She dropped her smile and turned a confused look to her friends. "By the way, why do radio people always say Roger?" Richie said, "Roger used to be the phonetic designation for the letter R, which stands for received." "Wow," Ella said. "So not only do I know that, but I also get to hear phonetic in a sentence." She turned to Tank and said, "All this knowledge, if you hang with Richie long enough, you'll seriously feel your brain swell." "Roger that," Richie said into the air and his bone mic. The scouts shared a quick laugh. Then Tank said, "Come on, let's go for a walk." Noah led the way off the path and walked past Blizzard, saying, "Come on, Blizz, follow us." The other crossers, humans and animals, followed Tank across the wooden terrain, their paws and feet crunching fallen leaves and splashing through streams. They walked behind a large rock formation to where the familiar flight of stairs that led to the grottos. Then, one by one, the Descenders, the Scouts, the Gifteds, and Tank stepped into the magic system of tunnels beneath the Clarksville Zoo. And I'll stop the video there, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and as always, please make sure that when you have the opportunity, I hope you guys will have the opportunity to join us again in the next video, where we will be continuing the Secret Zoo, Riddles in Danger, with Chapter 20. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. Take good care of yourselves and be safe.